The Galactic Federation battleship Indomitable Resolve wasn't exactly designed with humans in mind. For Jack Harper, this meant constantly ducking under doorways, squeezing into chairs that were either too wide or too narrow, and trying to decipher food labels in 17 different languages, none of which were English. "Remind me again why I signed up for this," Jack muttered to himself as he fumbled with the alien medical scanner that resembled an oversized egg whisk with too many buttons. The answer, of course, was simple. Humans had only joined the Galactic Federation 8 months ago, and everyone on Earth was still riding the high of holy crap. We're not alone in the universe. The Federation had graciously accepted Earth into their ranks with suspiciously little resistance. As Jack would later discover, this was because humans were universally classified as mostly harmless support species in the Federation database. So when the call went out for human medical personnel to join Federation ships, Jack had volunteered faster than you could say interstellar adventure. His background as an emergency medic made him a perfect candidate. What the Federation didn't know, and what Jack conveniently left off his application, was that he'd acquired most of his medical experience in some of the most dangerous combat zones on Earth. "Harper, the captain requests your presence on the bridge," came the gurgling voice of Mick Toole, the ship's communications officer. The Aquarian's translucent skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that Jack had learned meant mild annoyance, Mick Toole's default state when dealing with humans. Coming, Jack sighed, carefully setting down the scanner that he'd finally figured out was actually a molecular food analyzer and not medical equipment at all. The bridge of the Indomitable Resolve was a massive circular chamber filled with various alien species hunched over holographic displays. At the center stood Captain Krell Vor, an imposing Voraxian with slate-gray exoskeletal plates and 4 arms that were currently crossed in what Jack recognized as the universal posture of impatience. "Medical Officer Harper," the captain's voice reverberated through the translator. "I trust you're adapting to our facilities?" Jack straightened his posture. "Yes, sir. Just a few minor technical difficulties." "Technical difficulties," repeated First Officer Retake, a spindly Arthrosian whose mandibles clicked together in what Jack had learned was their species' equivalent of a snort. "He was trying to diagnose a food processor yesterday." "It looked like a medical scanner," Jack protested. "It clearly has food analyzer written on it," Retake clicked. "An Arthrosian script. Which, may I remind you, looks like someone dropped spaghetti on paper and called it an alphabet." Captain Krell Vor raised one of his 4 hands for silence. "Regardless, Harper, we've brought you here to formally introduce you to the senior staff." He gestured around the bridge. "You've met First Officer Retake and Communications Officer Mick Toole. This is our Chief of Security, Lieutenant Commander Thrix." Thrix was a Felidian, a species that resembled Earth cats if they had evolved into 7-foot-tall bipeds with opposable thumbs and a bad attitude. Her amber eyes narrowed as she assessed Jack. "The human doesn't look like much," she growled. "Now," Captain Krell Vor chided, "humans may be physically unimpressive and technologically primitive, but they have other qualities." "Gee, thanks," Jack muttered. "Their inclusion in the Federation was unanimously approved," the captain continued, ignoring Jack's comment. "They are remarkably adaptable and have unique medical insights." Jack was about to respond when the ship suddenly lurched violently to one side, sending him stumbling. Red lights began flashing across the bridge as alarm klaxons blared. "Captain!" Mick Toole shouted, his skin flashing rapid patterns of alarmed bioluminescence. "Multiple ships decloaking on our starboard side. Energy signatures match Zev'Rathi pirate vessels. Shields up." "Battle stations," Captain Krell Vor bellowed, his 4 arms flying across different control panels. "All non-essential personnel, evacuate the bridge." Thrix immediately moved toward Jack. "That means you, human. Get to medical bay and prepare for casualties." As Jack was hustled toward the exit, the ship shuddered again under what he assumed was enemy fire. Through the massive view screen, he caught a glimpse of sleek, predatory vessels with blood-red markings converging on the Indomitable Resolve. "So much for the peaceful diplomatic mission," Jack muttered as the doors sealed behind him, cutting off the controlled chaos of the bridge. The corridor ahead was bathed in pulsing red emergency lights, and he could hear the distant sound of orders being shouted in various alien languages. This was exactly why he'd packed his special medical kit, the one the Federation recruiters hadn't bothered to inspect too closely. The corridor rocked violently as another impact struck the ship. Jack bounced off one wall, and then the other, barely keeping his footing as the artificial gravity fluctuated. "Attention all crew," came the captain's voice over the ship-wide communication system. "This is not a drill. We are under attack by Zev'Rathi pirates. All personnel to battle stations. Medical staff prepare for casualties." "That's my cue," Jack muttered, picking up his pace. The medical bay was 4 decks down, and with the turbolifts likely locked down for combat, he'd have to take the emergency access tubes. As he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with Lieutenant Thrix, who appeared suddenly with her phaser drawn. "Harper, what are you doing wandering the corridors alone?" she hissed, her feline ears flattened against her head. "I'm trying to get to medical bay," Jack explained. "You know where I'm supposed to be?" Thrix's tail lashed in agitation. "The Zev'Rathi have breached the hull in multiple locations. I'll escort you." They moved quickly through the increasingly chaotic ship. Crew members rushed past them, some wounded, others carrying weapons or emergency equipment. The lighting kept flickering, and occasionally the artificial gravity would hiccup, causing them to briefly float before slamming back to the floor. "So who exactly are these Zev'Rathi?" Jack asked as they descended through an access tube. Thrix's expression darkened. "The scourge of this sector. Pirates, slavers, organ harvesters. They prey on Federation ships for technology and captives." "Organ harvesters? That's specific." "They believe consuming the organs of other species grants them strength," Thrix explained with disgust. "Particularly brains. They consider medical officers especially valuable targets." Jack nearly missed the next rung on the ladder. "Wait, what?" "Don't worry, human," Thrix said with what was probably supposed to be a reassuring growl. "Your species is unknown to them. They'll focus on capturing the Galtharian medical staff first." That's not actually comforting. They had just reached the deck where the medical bay was located when a massive explosion rocked the ship. The access tube hatch they had just passed through suddenly sealed shut with emergency bulkheads. "They're targeting key systems," Thrix snarled, drawing her weapon as the lights in the corridor flickered ominously. "Stay behind me." They hadn't gone more than 20 meters when 3 figures materialized at the end of the corridor, the shimmering effect of transport technology, revealing hulking bipedal reptilians with crimson scales and eyes that glowed an eerie yellow. Their bodies were covered in crude armor made from what appeared to be the bones and scales of other species, and they carried vicious-looking weapons. "Zev'Rathi boarding party," Thrix hissed, pushing Jack behind her. "When I engage them, run for the medical bay. It's 2 junctions down on the left." Jack didn't have time to argue before Thrix charged forward, moving with feline grace as she fired her phaser. The first Zev'Rathi took a direct hit and went down, but the other 2 spread out, returning fire with weapons that seemed to shoot arcs of electrical energy. Thrix dodged the first blast but wasn't quick enough to avoid the second. The energy bolt caught her in the shoulder, sending her spinning to the floor with a pained roar. Jack saw her struggle to rise, but her right arm hung uselessly at her side. The 2 remaining Zev'Rathi advanced, their reptilian mouths opening to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. One of them spotted Jack and hissed something in a guttural language that the translator picked up as, "The soft pink one must be their medical officer. Take it alive." Met. Jack's eyes darted around the corridor, looking for any kind of weapon or advantage. The wounded Thrix was trying to reach her fallen phaser with her good arm, but she wouldn't make it in time. "Hey, lizard brains," Jack shouted, drawing their attention. "You want a medical officer? Come and get one." It was a desperate play for time, but it worked. The 2 Zev'Rathi turned their full attention to him, momentarily forgetting about Thrix. The larger one approached Jack, reaching out with a clawed hand. Jack reacted on instinct, the result of years of emergency medicine in war zones where being a medic didn't make you a non-combatant. He ducked under the Zev'Rathi's grab, stepped inside its reach, and drove his elbow into a spot just under its jaw where most reptilian species had a cluster of pressure-sensitive nerves. The Zev'Rathi made a choking sound and staggered back. Its companion raised its weapon, but Jack was already moving, grabbing a fire suppression canister from the wall and hurling it at the pirate's head. The canister connected with a satisfying clang, and the second Zev'Rathi went down hard. The first one recovered quickly, however, and lunged at Jack with a roar. They collided and went down in a tangle of limbs. Jack found himself pinned beneath the much heavier alien, its claws digging into his shoulders and its fang-filled maw inches from his face. Soft, tasty, medic, it hissed in broken standard. "Sorry to disappoint," Jack grunted, "but I don't think you'll like my taste." With a move that had saved his life in more than one bar fight back on Earth, Jack headbutted the Zev'Rathi right on its sensitive nasal ridge. The alien reeled back in pain, and Jack followed up with a quick jab to the throat. The Zev'Rathi collapsed, making wet, gasping sounds. Scrambling to his feet, Jack rushed over to Thrix, who was staring at him with wide, disbelieving eyes. "What was that?" she managed. "You're a medical officer." "I'm a combat medic," Jack corrected, quickly examining her injury. "There's a difference. Can you walk? We need to get to the medical bay." Thrix nodded weakly, still looking at Jack as if he'd grown a second head. "The Zev'Rathi, you disabled them with your bare hands." Jack helped her to her feet. "Let's just say Earth's emergency rooms can be rough places." He picked up her fallen phaser and handed it to her good hand. "Now, which way to the medical bay again?" Jack supported Thrix as they limped through the chaos of the embattled starship. Emergency lights pulsed in a disorienting rhythm, and occasional weapons fire echoed through the corridors. Twice they had to duck into alcoves to avoid Zev'Rathi patrols. "The medical bay is just ahead," Thrix whispered, her breathing labored. The energy weapon had left an ugly burn across her shoulder, and Jack could tell she was fighting to stay conscious. They rounded the final corner and saw the medical bay entrance surrounded by 4 more Zev'Rathi pirates who were attempting to break through the sealed doors. "Great," Jack muttered. "More lizard people." Thrix tried to raise her phaser, but her injury made it impossible for her to aim properly. "I can't." "Stay here," Jack told her, setting her down behind a supply crate. "I'll handle this." "You're not armed," Thrix protested weakly. Jack gave her a grim smile. "I'm about to be." With that, he crept forward, keeping to the shadows until he reached a maintenance panel. With quick, practiced movements, he pried it open and removed a length of conduit and a multi-tool from his pocket. It took him only seconds to fashion a crude but effective club. "Here goes nothing," he whispered to himself, then called out in a loud voice, "Hey, a medical emergency here." The Zev'Rathi spun around, weapons rising to target him. The apparent leader, distinguished by more elaborate bone decorations, stepped forward. "Surrender, medical officer," it hissed through the translator. "Your knowledge is valuable. Cooperate, and you may live as our slave rather than our meal." "Tempting offer," Jack replied, stepping forward with his hands partially raised, the improvised club hidden behind his arm. "But I've got a better one. How about you all leave this ship, and I don't have to show you why humans are really bad at being taken prisoner." The Zev'Rathi looked at each other, clearly not understanding the threat. The leader made a sound that might have been laughter. "The soft one thinks it can bargain," it hissed to its companions. "Take it alive. The others inside can be food." "Yeah, that's not going to work for me," Jack sighed. Then, with speed that seemed to surprise the pirates, he hurled his improvised club directly at the control panel they had been trying to breach. The panel sparked and shorted out spectacularly, momentarily blinding the Zev'Rathi who were looking at it. In that instant of confusion, Jack charged. He slammed into the first pirate, using the alien's own momentum to redirect it into its companion. Both went down in a tangle of limbs and curses. The third managed to raise its weapon. But Jack was already inside its guard, delivering a precise strike to what he hoped was an equivalent to a solar plexus in reptilian anatomy. It worked better than expected. The Zev'Rathi doubled over, gasping, and Jack wrenched the energy weapon from its grasp. The fourth pirate, the leader, recovered quickly and lunged at Jack with a bone dagger that glowed with an unnatural light. Jack barely dodged the first swipe, feeling the blade graze his uniform. He triggered the captured energy weapon, but nothing happened apparently. It had some kind of biometric safety. "Should have expected that," he muttered, tossing the useless weapon aside and backing up as the Zev'Rathi advanced. "Your soft skin will peel nicely," the pirate leader hissed, its tongue flicking out. Jack's back hit the medical bay doors. With nowhere else to retreat, he did the only thing he could think of. He dropped to the floor and swept his leg out, catching the Zev'Rathi's ankle. The pirate, top-heavy with its bone armor, toppled forward with a surprised shriek. Rolling to the side, Jack sprang to his feet and delivered a brutal kick to the fallen alien's head, then followed up with a stomp to what he hoped was a sensitive area in the spine. The Zev'Rathi went limp. The medical bay doors suddenly slid open, revealing the ship's chief medical officer, a Galactic named Dr. Plex with 6 tentacle-like arms, each holding a different medical instrument. "Harper, what in the name of the 7 moons is going on out here?" Dr. Plex demanded, all 4 of his eyes blinking in confusion as he took in the scene of Jack standing over the unconscious Zev'Rathi pirates. "Just clearing the entrance," Jack replied, breathing heavily. "Got a wounded officer who needs attention." He gestured to where Thrix was now struggling to make her way toward them. Dr. Plex stared at Jack, then at the fallen pirates, then back at Jack. "But you're a human medical officer. You're supposed to be non-combative." Jack stepped over the unconscious pirate leader and helped Thrix to the medical bay entrance. "Yeah, about that. There seems to be some confusion about human medical training." Inside the medical bay, several members of the medical staff were huddled behind beds, looking terrified. A few wounded crew members were already being treated. "The pirates were trying to breach the medical bay," Jack explained as he helped Thrix onto an examination table. "They seemed particularly interested in capturing medical personnel." "They consume brains," Dr. Plex said with a shudder that rippled through all 6 of his arms, particularly those of healers. "They believe it gives them medical knowledge." "That's not how it works," Jack said, examining Thrix's wound more closely. "This is a 3rd-degree plasma burn. She needs immediate treatment." Dr. Plex moved to assist, his multiple arms working in perfect coordination as he applied various alien medical treatments to Thrix's injury. "How did you neutralize 4 Zev'Rathi warriors? They're among the most feared combatants in this sector." "Just got lucky," I guess Jack replied evasively. "Anyone have a communicator? We need to alert security about these unconscious pirates before they wake up." A sudden commotion at the medical bay entrance interrupted them. One of the Zev'Rathi, the leader, was back on its feet, swaying but conscious, and now holding what appeared to be an explosive device. "If we can't have the healers," it slurred through damaged jaw structures, "then no one will." Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed a hypospray from Dr. Plex's instrument tray, adjusted the dosage to maximum, and hurled it like a dart. The hypospray struck the Zev'Rathi directly in the neck, automatically injecting its contents. The pirate's eyes widened in surprise before it collapsed in a heap, the explosive device clattering harmlessly to the floor. The medical bay fell silent as everyone stared at Jack in shock. "What did you inject it with?" Dr. Plex finally asked. Jack shrugged. "Triox compound. Harmless to most species, but reptilians are hypersensitive to it. Causes immediate sedation." Dr. Plex's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "How did you know that?" "I read the medical database," Jack said simply. "Now, about those communicators." As Dr. Plex returned to treating Thrix, Jack could hear the Philidian lieutenant murmuring to another medical officer. The human was supposed to be a medic. "So why is he covered in enemy blood?" The ship-wide communication system crackled to life with the voice of First Officer Retake. "Attention all personnel. Zev'Rathi pirates have seized control of decks 3 through 7. Security teams are cut off from the armory and command center. All crew. Implement emergency protocol Sigma 9. Jack looked up from bandaging a wounded engineer's arm. What's protocol Sigma 9? Abandoned ship, Dr. Plex replied grimly, all 4 of his eyes blinking in distress. We've never had to use it before. Abandoned ship? Jack repeated incredulously. We can't just leave the Indomitable Resolve to these pirates. Lieutenant Thrix, who was now sitting up despite Dr. Plex's protests, shook her head. It's standard procedure when outnumbered by Zev'Rathi. They typically don't pursue escape pods. That's because they're after the ship's technology and medical personnel, Jack argued. They're not going to let medical staff evacuate. As if to confirm his assessment, the medical bay doors sealed with a heavy metallic clank. Dr. Plex rushed to the control panel, his tentacles flying over the interface. The evacuation protocols have been overridden, he reported, his voice rising in panic. We're locked in. Can you contact the bridge? Jack asked. Negative, Thrix replied, checking her communicator. All channels are jammed. Jack paced the medical bay, thinking rapidly. They're herding us like cattle. They'll gas the room next. How do you know their tactics? Thrix demanded suspiciously. Because it's what I do, Jack replied matter-of-factly. Cut off communication. Trap your targets. Then take them alive without a fight. Dr. Plex's color changed to a pale yellow, which Jack had learned indicated extreme fear in Galtherians. What can we do? Jack's eyes fell on the ship's schematics displayed on a medical console. There, he pointed, maintenance tunnels run behind the medical bay. They're too small for most of the crew, but I could fit. To what end? Thrix asked, wincing as she tried to stand. Even if you escape, what can one human do against a ship full of Zev'Rathi? Jack grinned. You'd be surprised what one human can do with the right motivation. Dr. Plex, do you have access to your pharmaceutical stores? Yes, but I need adrenaline stimulants, sedatives, and whatever you've got that causes temporary paralysis in reptilian species. Dr. Plex stared at him. Those aren't meant to be used as weapons, Harper. Today they are, Jack replied firmly. And I need a volunteer to come with me, someone small enough to fit in the tunnels and who knows the ship's layout. A timid voice spoke up from the corner. I can help. It was Mick Toole, the Aquarian communications officer, his translucent skin pulsing with nervous bioluminescence. I know the maintenance tunnels well. Jack nodded. Perfect. Dr. Plex helped me gather those supplies. Thrix, you're in charge of the medical bay. Barricade the doors from the inside after we leave. This is madness, Thrix protested. You're proposing to take on an entire pirate crew with an Aquarian and some medical supplies? Not the entire crew, Jack corrected, already filling his pockets with vials and hyposprays that Dr. Plex reluctantly provided. Just enough to get to the armory and restore communication with the bridge. Within minutes, Jack and Mick Toole were ready to go. Dr. Plex had removed a ventilation panel, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel barely large enough for a human to crawl through. I'm still not sure about this plan, Mick Toole gurgled nervously, his skin flashing patterns of anxiety. It's not a plan, Jack admitted as he climbed into the tunnel. It's more of a desperate improvisation. But sometimes that's all you need. As they crawled through the cramped maintenance tunnels, Jack could hear the sounds of the ship under alien occupation, the heavy footfalls of Zev'Rathi patrols, the occasional scream of a captured crew member, the ominous hum of unfamiliar technology being attached to the ship's systems. The armory is 2 decks up, Mick Toole whispered, his bioluminescence dimmed to near invisibility. But there's a security checkpoint that's likely under pirate control. Then we'll go around it, Jack decided. Is there a medical storage area nearby? Something that might have portable equipment? Mick Toole thought for a moment. Yes, there's an emergency medical cache on this deck. It should be just ahead. They found the cache exactly where Mick Toole had indicated. a small room filled with basic medical supplies for emergency situations. Jack quickly grabbed what he needed, fashioning crude but effective weapons from the available materials. "What are you making?" Mick Toole asked, watching in fascination as Jack assembled a device from a portable defibrillator and several vials of medication. "Back on Earth, we call this thinking outside the box," Jack replied with a grim smile. "Now let's find the closest pirate patrol." They didn't have to wait long. From their hiding place in an alcove, they watched as two Zev'Rathi guards marched past, dragging a semi-conscious Arthrosian crew member between them. "On my signal," Jack whispered to Mick Toole. "Ready?" "Ready?" The Aquarian's skin flashed a pattern that Jack interpreted as absolutely terrified but will help anyway. Jack nodded, then stepped out into the corridor, his improvised medical weapon raised. "Excuse me, gentlemen? I think you dropped something." The Zev'Rathi spun around, dropping their prisoner in surprise. Before they could react further, Jack triggered his device. The modified defibrillator discharged, launching the specialized darts he'd fashioned. They struck both pirates simultaneously, delivering a combination of sedatives and muscle relaxants directly into their bloodstreams. The effect was immediate and impressive. Both Zev'Rathi went rigid, then collapsed in twitching heaps on the floor. "Ha," Jack said, studying the results. "That worked better than I expected." Mick Toole emerged from hiding, his skin pulsing with astonishment. "How did you know that would work?" "Educated guess," Jack admitted, retrieving the pirates' weapons. Reptilian nervous systems tend to be sensitive to specific electrical pulses, and their metabolism can't process certain compounds. Basic xenobiology. "Basic," Mick Toole repeated incredulously. "That's advanced combat application of medical knowledge." Jack shrugged. "Where I come from, medics often have to be creative." He handed one of the alien weapons to Mick Toole. "Think you can use this?" The Aquarian hesitantly took the weapon. "I've had basic training, but I'm not a security officer." "Today we're all security officers," Jack replied, helping the stunned Arthrosian crew member to his feet. "Can you walk?" The Arthrosian nodded weakly. "They were taking me to their ship for processing." "Change of plans," Jack told him. "You're coming with us. We're taking back the Indomitable Resolve." As they moved cautiously through the corridors, avoiding Zev'Rathi patrols when possible and neutralizing them when necessary, Mick Toole kept glancing at Jack with a mixture of awe and confusion. "Harper," he finally whispered as they approached the armory. "Where did a human medical officer learn to fight like this?" Jack smiled grimly. "Let's just say Earth's definition of medical officer might be a bit different from the Federation's." The armory door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a room filled with weapons, armor, and tactical equipment, all of it guarded by three very surprised Zev'Rathi pirates. "Hi there," Jack said casually, before tossing one of his last improvised medical grenades into the room. The device detonated with a soft pop, releasing a cloud of sedative gas. The pirates had just enough time to look confused before they collapsed in unison. "Clear," Jack called, and Mick Toole followed him into the armory. "I can't believe that worked," the Aquarian said, his skin flashing patterns of amazement. "Reptilian respiratory systems," Jack explained, already sorting through the available weapons. "I'm particularly susceptible to inhalants. Now grab whatever you can carry and help me distribute these to any crew members we can find." Within 20 minutes, they had armed a small group of liberated crew members and established a secure area on Deck 5. Jack had quickly become the de facto leader of the resistance, much to his own surprise. "We need to re-establish communication with the bridge," he told the assembled crew. "Does anyone know if the captain is still in command?" A Vulcan engineering officer spoke up. The last report indicated that the bridge was under siege but holding. "The Zev'Rathi commander is directing operations from the Auxiliary Command Center." Jack nodded, formulating a plan. "Then that's where we need to go. If we can capture or neutralize their leader, we might be able to end this without further bloodshed." The auxiliary command center will be heavily guarded, Miktul warned, his skin pulsing with concern. Then we'll need a distraction, Jack replied, his eyes falling on the ship's schematics displayed on a nearby console. And I think I know just the thing. 10 minutes later, Jack was crawling through another maintenance tunnel, this one leading directly to the auxiliary command center. Behind him, the rest of the crew was implementing his diversionary plan, a carefully orchestrated series of explosions and alarms designed to draw away as many Zev'Rathi guards as possible. This is insane, muttered the Vulcan engineer who had insisted on accompanying him. The statistical probability of success is... Never tell me the odds, Jack interrupted. Trust me, I've been in worse situations. That is not reassuring, the Vulcan replied dryly. They reached the access panel that would open into the auxiliary command center. Jack could hear voices on the other side, the guttural hisses of the Zev'Rathi, including one that sounded more authoritative than the others. That must be their commander, Jack whispered. Remember the plan. On my signal, trigger the environmental controls. The Vulcan nodded, his expression suggesting he still found the plan highly illogical but was out of better options. Jack took a deep breath, checked the makeshift weapons he'd assembled from the armory supplies, and gave the signal. Immediately, the ship's environmental alerts began blaring, and the auxiliary command center's lights flashed red. Life support failure in command center, announced the ship's computer in multiple languages. Evacuate immediately. It was a lie, of course. The Vulcan had simply tricked the computer into thinking there was a breach, but the Zev'Rathi didn't know that. Jack heard confused shouts and the sound of several sets of feet rushing for the exit. Now, he whispered, and pushed open the access panel. The auxiliary command center was in chaos. Most of the pirates had fled, leaving only their commander and 2 guards. The commander was a massive specimen, nearly 8 feet tall, with elaborate bone jewelry and vivid red scales that seemed to glow in the emergency lighting. False alarm, the commander hissed, spotting Jack. It's a trick. Mine. Jack stepped fully into the room, holding what appeared to be a standard-issue Federation phaser. Actually, it's a distraction, and it worked perfectly. The 2 guards raised their weapons, but Jack was faster. He fired twice, not with phaser energy, but with hyposprays he'd modified to fire from the phaser casing. The guards went down instantly, paralyzed by the cocktail of medical compounds. The commander, however, was too quick. It dodged Jack's 3rd shot and lunged forward with surprising speed, knocking the weapon from Jack's hand. I've heard about you, the commander hissed, circling Jack warily. The human who fights like a Kragvor war beast. My warriors thought you were some kind of special operative. But you're just a medical officer, aren't you? Just a medic, Jack agreed, keeping his distance. But where I come from, that means something a little different than what you might think. The commander laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Your Federation classified humans as a non-aggressive support species. Soft, weak. They said you were only good for healing and diplomacy. Yeah, about that classification, Jack said, slowly reaching into his pocket. I think there might have been a slight misunderstanding. The commander lunged again, but Jack was ready this time. He sidestepped the attack and slammed a standard medical injector directly into the commander's neck. The massive reptilian staggered, clawing at the device. What did you inject me with? It gasped, already showing signs of distress. Glucose solution, Jack replied. Completely harmless to most species, but Zev'Rathi physiology can't process simple sugars. You'll be unconscious in about 10 seconds. The commander roared in fury and made one last desperate attack, swinging a clawed hand at Jack's head. Jack ducked under the blow and delivered a precisely targeted strike to the commander's knee joint, a move he'd learned during his time in Earth's less peaceful regions. By the way, Jack added as the commander collapsed to one knee, humans aren't non-aggressive. We're just really good at hiding it when we need to. The commander toppled forward, unconscious. Jack quickly secured it with restraints, then joined the Vulcan at the command console. Can you restore communication with the bridge? he asked. The Vulcan nodded, his fingers flying over the alien interface. Yes, the pirates' jamming technology is primitive by Federation standards. Moments later, the view screen flickered to life, revealing Captain Krelvor's surprised face. Harper? The captain exclaimed, all four of his eyes widening. How did you access the command channel? Where are you? Auxiliary Command Center, sir, Jack reported, trying to sound casual despite the unconscious Zev'Rathi commander at his feet. We've secured it and are working on restoring ship-wide systems. The pirate leader has been neutralized. There was a stunned silence from the bridge crew visible on the screen. You neutralized the Zev'Rathi commander? First Officer Retake finally asked, her mandibles clicking in disbelief. With a glucose solution, and what humans call a leg sweep, the Vulcan engineer reported matter-of-factly. Captain Krelvor's forearms moved in what Jack had learned was a gesture of astonishment. Harper, when this crisis is resolved, we will have a long discussion about your unconventional qualifications. Looking forward to it, sir, Jack replied. But first, we need to retake the ship. The Zev'Rathi are in disarray, but they still control key systems and have hostages. Our security teams are pinned down on decks 3 and 7, the captain said. What do you propose, Medical Officer Harper? Jack glanced at the ship's schematics displayed on the auxiliary command console. If we can restore internal communications, I can coordinate with the resistance cells we've established. And if we access environmental controls, we could flood specific sections with sedative gas, the Vulcan engineer finished, catching on quickly. Exactly, Jack nodded. Targeted, non-lethal, and effective against reptilian physiology. The captain's expression was unreadable. Proceed, Harper. You have my authorization. Apparently, you've been quite effective so far. With the bridge crew's help, they quickly restored ship-wide communications and gained access to environmental controls. Jack's improvised resistance force coordinated their attacks with precision, systematically reclaiming the ship deck by deck. The remaining Zev'Rathi, leaderless and confused, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. 2 hours later, Jack stood on the bridge of the Indomitable Resolve, covered in various alien substances, including a fair amount of Zev'Rathi blood, giving his report to a still-stunned Captain Krelvor. The last of the pirates have been secured in the cargo holds, Jack concluded. Medical teams are treating the wounded, and engineering reports that all pirate technology has been removed from our systems. Remarkable, the captain said, studying Jack with all four eyes. And you achieved this with medical supplies and basic weapons? And a really good understanding of xenophysiology, Jack added modestly. First Officer Retake's mandibles clicked rapidly. The Federation database classified humans as non-aggressive support species. I believe that assessment may require updating. About that, Jack said, clearing his throat. There might have been some miscommunication during Earth's initial contact. You see, on my planet, even medical personnel often operate in combat zones. Some of us are specifically trained for it. Combat medics, Lieutenant Thrick said, entering the bridge with her arm in a sling. Harper explained it to me. They heal their allies while fighting their enemies. Captain Krelvor's forearms performed a complex gesture that Jack couldn't interpret. So when your planet sent us medical officers, they actually sent combat veterans with medical training, Jack confirmed. Or in my case, medical training with combat experience. The translation might have lost some nuance. 1 week after the Zev'Rathi attack, the Indomitable Resolve had been fully repaired and was continuing its mission. Jack found himself summoned to a meeting with the senior staff in the ship's conference room. As he entered, he noticed an unusual atmosphere, a mixture of respect, curiosity, and what might have been wariness. Captain Krelvor gestured for him to take a seat. Medical Officer Harper, the captain began formally. In light of recent events, we've been in communication with Federation headquarters regarding the unique capabilities of human crew members. Jack shifted uncomfortably. Sir, if this is about my actions during the attack. "It is indeed," the captain interrupted, "but not in the way you might think. Your actions saved this ship and its crew. The Federation Council is now reassessing humanity's classification in the official database." First Officer Retek's mandibles clicked in what Jack had learned was amusement. The preliminary reclassification suggests humans are a deceptively resourceful species with unexpected combat proficiency. "That's flattering?" Jack said uncertainly. "It's accurate," Lieutenant Thrix interjected. "You turned medical supplies into weapons, organized a resistance force, and personally neutralized the Zev'Rathi commander." Dr. Plex's 6 tentacles rippled with what might have been embarrassment. "We may have underestimated your species' adaptability." "It's not just me," Jack explained. "On Earth, medical personnel, especially those in emergency services, often work in dangerous situations. We're trained to improvise, to function under pressure." The captain leaned forward. "This information would have been useful before we classified humans as mostly harmless support species." Jack couldn't help but smile. "To be fair, sir, no one actually asked us if we were dangerous." "A significant oversight," the captain acknowledged, "but one we're now correcting. Which brings me to the purpose of this meeting." The captain pressed a control, and a holographic display appeared over the conference table, showing a new ship's roster. Jack was startled to see his name listed under 2 positions, medical officer and security advisor. "A dual role?" he asked, surprised. "The first of its kind," the captain confirmed. "You will continue your medical duties, but also assist Lieutenant Thrix in training the crew in your unique approach to problem-solving." Thrix, her feline features inscrutable, added, "Your combat techniques are unorthodox but effective. The crew could benefit from learning them." Jack looked around the table at the alien faces watching him expectantly. "I'm honored, sir. But I should warn you, there are more humans joining the Federation fleet soon. And some of them make me look positively docile." Captain Krelvor's forearms made a gesture that Jack now recognized as resigned acceptance. "We suspected as much. Federation headquarters is already preparing for the arrival of more combat medics." "Not all human medics are combat trained," Jack clarified. "But all of us are pretty good at thinking outside the box." "A dangerous quality," Mick Toole observed, his translucent skin pulsing thoughtfully. "But perhaps one the Federation needs." As the meeting concluded and Jack prepared to report to his new dual posts, he couldn't help but reflect on the irony. He'd joined the Federation to explore the stars and heal the injured, never expecting to become the ship's de facto combat instructor. The Indomitable Resolve's corridors seemed different now. The alien crew members no longer looked at him with confusion or mild amusement, but with a newfound respect. Some even nodded deferentially as he passed. In the medical bay, Jack found Dr. Plex organizing supplies. The Galtherian's 6 arms worked in perfect harmony, but paused when Jack entered. "Ah, Harper," Dr. Plex said. "I've been meaning to ask you something." "What's that, Doctor?" "These combat techniques of yours, are they part of standard human medical training?" Jack considered the question carefully. "Not exactly," he admitted. "But adaptability is. Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When we need to protect our patients, ourselves, or our colleagues, we find a way." Dr. Plex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "A fascinating perspective. Perhaps there's something to learn from the human approach after all." Jack smiled as he began organizing his medical instruments alongside the combat training schedule he'd been developing. "I think we all have something to learn from each other, Doctor. That's what the Federation is all about, isn't it?" As the Indomitable Resolve continued its journey through the stars, the message gradually spread throughout the Galactic Federation. Humans might be new to interstellar society, but they were far from the simple support species everyone had assumed. They were adaptable, resourceful, and when necessary, formidable. And if you happened to encounter a human medical officer covered in enemy blood, well, that was just another day for humanity's finest combat medics.